Well, earlier I spoke to John Penrose, he's a Conservative MP. He's also the government's anti-corruption czar. And I started off by asking him how much of the dirty money in the UK is Russian.
We don't know is the simple answer. I mean, I wish we did, but because all the oligarchs and the kleptocrats and the crime lords and the drug barons and all these things from around the world, because they have so much money to employ top quality lawyers, they're really good at hiding their identity behind shell companies and all these other things. So we don't know. And one of the things that the economic crime bill will do today is to rip away those veils. And so we will be able to see who owns what. And of course, you can't sanction an oligarch's cash unless you know where the cash is. This will mean that we can follow the money, we can find where it is, and we can freeze it before they can whip it away.
And what will the bill going through Parliament today do you think, to address that problem?
It'll make a huge difference is the answer. I mean, I'm sure that there will be other things that we'll need to do in future, but Britain was one of the first countries in the world to get this idea and introduce rules to be able to follow the money, to be able to find out who owns what. But inevitably, because we were one of the first countries in the world, there were some loopholes which people didn't discover till later. And this bill plugs those loopholes, and it will mean that basically, if you are an oligarch or a crime lord with money stashed in London, you won't be able to hide it anymore. We'll know where it is, we'll know where you are, and we'll be able to grab it, sanction it, and stop it.
Why has it taken Russia invading Ukraine for this to happen?
Well, the fair question. I mean, it's a number of us, myself included, have been asking for these loopholes to be plugged for a couple of years now. And all right, we have had a few other things going on, like Brexit and like the pandemic. So I guess everyone can understand why there have been other things that are more urgent. But even though those other things were more urgent in the past, this is really important too. So I think it's a tragedy that it's taken something like Ukraine to shove it to the top of the political agenda, but it is something that absolutely has to be done. It's vital and it's important, and I'm glad, for whatever reason, that we are at least getting it done now.
You are the government's anti-corruption czar. Is there something corrupt about the amount of Russian money which has been donated to the Conservative Party? About Evgeny Lebedev being given a peerage after concerns about security were removed? And is that part of why the UK government has been slower than the American government and the EU in sanctioning individuals since the invasion?
Oh, no, quite the reverse, I think. I mean, I think it's hard to argue that we've been not in the forefront of the overall response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I mean, we've been one of the earliest countries out there with military help for the Ukrainians and the diplomatic effort to try and build the coalition of democratic countries against Russia. But you are right that the crucial question here is we can't just go around saying that all Russians in the UK are somehow dodgy, because actually very many of them have fled the Putin regime and have come here for safety and are trying to hide from the Putin regime. And the awful case of the Skripals being poisoned a couple of years ago shows that there are plenty of them who are on the side of the good guys, if I can put it that way. The problem is that some of them, we hope a minority, but some of them are definitely part of Putin's gang, part of Putin's regime. And the crucial thing is that we don't just assume that all Russians are either good or bad. We need to be able to distinguish between them, and that's why this bill is so important, because it means that we can follow the money, we can find the ones who are on Putin's side, and we can pick them out from the bigger crowd.
But do you understand why some people find it surprising that only now we're looking to try and work out who are the good and the bad? Years after, as you mentioned, the Salisbury poisonings, since Crimea was annexed, there have been so many things down the years that only now are we now worrying about who are the good Russians and who are the bad ones.
So I mean, I think the Prime Minister has said this in Parliament, that in retrospect, the entire democratic world was wrong to tolerate and not to rear up in horror way back when Russia entered the Crimea. It's that kind of looking the other way which I think has given Putin hope that this time round he can pull the same trick again. So I don't think it's just Britain. I think that the entire developed democratic world is guilty of this and of going occasionally for a reset, for tolerating and accepting these acts of Russian aggression, not just in the Crimea, but in the Donbass. Before that, his support for Assad in Syria. And I think that this is something which, as a as a sort of democratic civilization, it's not just our country or one or two others. It's a huge chunk of our planet. We have to make sure that this time he understands he has made a huge mistake, and this isn't something that's going to be forgiven, forgotten, or otherwise brushed under the carpet, which I'm afraid is something which, in retrospect, we have all been doing, not just Britain, in the past.
Just find out why I've got you, John Penrose. Do you think that the Home Office issuing 50 visas to family members of Ukrainians to come to Britain is a world-leading response to the humanitarian crisis?
No, we clearly need to issue a whole lot more, and I'm delighted that we've announced different programs of visas. Actually, those are very, very sensible in principle, but in principle doesn't get you across a border. So we've got to make sure that it works in practice. I'm expecting that people will be wanting to hear a great deal more about that from the government, from ministers in Parliament, probably today, to say, look, it's great that we are, we know who we're trying to admit. We've got all these humanitarian routes into the UK for Ukrainians. Let's see it actually happening. What's stopping that?
Well, let's